liar.
Mm-hmm.
So every archive video starts with me doing this.
Nice.
Same thing. Okay, perfect. I can hear it. You look good. Look at that. Look at that natural light on you.
I know, right through the window.
All right, I'm going to read in our intro and wait for people to start joining. Or wait, no, I'm going to tweet it. Oops. No, tweet it. Mute your stream.
Mute it.
Because it will be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay. Live now! Exclamation point. Great, we did it. And then let me get my chat here and perf. We're gonna get started. All right. Welcome back, friends, to Attack the Pantry. I am Jenn Vega. This stream is a deep dive into ingredients, cooking techniques, and recipes to help you cook for yourself during quarantine and, you know, the rest of your adult life. Last time on the show, we talked to Samantha Pagan about food systems. It was a very educational stream, and I thought maybe we should have charged for it. But my goodness, it was a lot of information. You can watch all of the past clips here on my channel if you click on videos. The entire archive is located at youtube.com/JENNDLV. Make sure to subscribe there. Great news, I'm a Twitch affiliate. If you have Amazon Prime, that means you get a free gift subscription every month, and you can connect that to your favorite creators and channels every month. So if you have one, click on the purple button that says gift a sub, and you'll get a little crown next to your name in the chat. You get all special and beautiful. Lots of really good links below the video, like Patreon and Etsy and all my social media. But one way to really help us out today is to share the stream and tell people that you're watching so they can join in and maybe learn something today. I think that's important. But I have a guest today. Hello.
Hi.
What's your name and what do you do?
I am Chris Hernandez. I am a graphic designer, artist, animator type person. I mostly work in advertising and stuff, but I do some video game nonprofit things too.
Yes.
So yeah, some of you, if you know Jenn, you've probably seen me around for a lot of Jenn's extracurricular stuff too. So.
Well, then that brings me to the question, how do we know each other?
Okay, I was thinking about this because you mentioned this earlier. I think we met at Low Level, the second Low Level festival.
Was it really? I thought
so.
It was before that.
You were working the door, and I knew that you had helped organize it with our friend Dustin. And
yes.
I think that was the first time I officially met you. We'd probably been around Pulsewave stuff before then.
Yes, okay, that makes sense. You definitely have come to Pulsewave, but I probably was running around with a clipboard.
Right, exactly.
And not paying attention.
Yeah, so I think when you were working with Dustin on Pulsewave, I was like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen you around, and that was when after the show when we were loading arcade cabinets and stuff, which is a thing I do.
Oh, I should have gotten the picture. There's a picture of me just sitting on the floor.
Yes.
This morning with a bottle of wine waiting for you guys to load out. It was
and yeah, we just kind of that sort of electronic music, chiptune specifically kind of stuff, and indie gaming is kind of how we know each other. Now we're both on the board of Death by Audio Arcade, and
now we get to work together every week on stuff.
Yes, exactly.
We get to work with each other. Oh, catching up here in the chat, we've got Dandy in the Bronx. Hello, Diego. Good to see you. Your stream was really fun today. And we've got Gwem also, who had a stream also before this. Glad to see you both in the chat. If you're here, say hello, and we love to see you. But so today's show is sorry, my alarm's going off. Alexa, stop. I have to check on a cake really quick, but Chris, can you just tell us a little bit about the difference? Okay, so design at large, there's a lot of parts to it, but what is your specific part in it? So you're more on the graphic design part of things. Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
Be right back.
Yes. Cool. Yeah, so I do a lot of layout and usually work with things that are existing brands. So we're not creating a lot of from scratch content. We're sort of taking existing aesthetics and like assembling them. So I've worked on some branding projects for like our nonprofit things, but my day job is like taking a look and feel of something or like an existing look and combining the stuff, organizing information, and like laying it out so that it's like very readable and clear and easy to understand for a viewer who may not have a lot of time to look at it.
Oh, look at that. That was perfect timing.
Perfect. You caught all that, right, Jen?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. I have a very persnickety cake in the oven that is taking a lot longer than I wanted it to, and it's interfering with the stream. Hey, Robert, good to see you in the chat. Glad to have my friends here in the chat. So for the next part of the show, I like to share my screen. I promise you it's clean. And we're going to look at what people have sent in this week, which is very, very exciting. I love this part of the show. And if you are new to the chat and you would like to be featured here or show off your cooking, please do tag me on Instagram and Twitter. My username is @Randwiches. And I complained last week because we didn't have any entries. And this week we exploded with entries. So thank you all for sending in your photos this week. This one, I learned a new thing. Okay, so this is a dessert called a Charlie Chaplin, and it was popularized up in Rochester or like upstate New York. And a Bear Claw Rar made these in the shape of Darth Vader. They look amazing. I can't tell if you tempered the chocolate or not. I know you said you wanted to, but I honestly can't tell right when it comes out of the mold. But it looks awesome. And then I had to like look up what a Charlie Chaplin was. Chris, have you ever heard of a Charlie Chaplin?
I have not. It looks like it's maybe a marshmallow thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So a Charlie Chaplin was popularized in Buffalo. So it's like kind of like an Almond Joy, but with marshmallow. So it's chocolate covered coconut with marshmallow and nuts. I think cashews in this version. But the Darth Vader one looks way better than the original candy shop version. It's just like a loaf of chocolate. But I had never heard of it, and I'm allergic to it, so I can't have it.
Oh, right.
It has coconut in it, which is very sad.
Yeah.
Very, very sad. But thanks for sending that one in, Bear Claw Rar. I don't know how to say your username. Geskeep? Is this how we say it? Geskeep? Guskeep. But this is a beautiful homemade ricotta Italian cheesecake. I don't think I've seen one this purple before, which is really gorgeous. Like, I think it's probably blackberry. Yeah, it looks more like blackberry and not blueberry. But making your own ricotta cheese is super easy. I actually have a YouTube video about it. If you all are curious, I can tweet it later. But this is beautiful. I don't know, when was the last time I had cheesecake? Have you had cheesecake recently?
I have.
You have?
I was doing one of those meal kit services for a while during COVID because I was like unable to work up the willpower to go to the grocery store.
Sure.
Just being stuck at home all day with work and everything. And one of them threw in like a free little mini cheesecake.
Oh,
and
yay.
It was actually really, really good. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, Robert says this cheesecake, it looks amazing. I agree. It's very beautiful. But Gwem sent a whole cooking venture here. So Gwem, who had the stream earlier, gave us a little bit of a gallery of caramelizing onions. Gwem, how long did it take to caramelize these onions? Because this is like a joke in the food world that a lot of recipes will say, caramelize the onions for 15 minutes. And it's like, no, it's going to take 45 to 2 hours, depending on, how many onions you've got. So you've got a whole Dutch oven's worth of onions. So I bet this took a long time, but it's a labor of love, French onion soup. And here's, I think this is the cooking portion of it. Traditional French onion soup. You can see that you've got your, did you use beef broth in yours? I don't know if you're in the chat right now, but French onion soup is great when you understand all of the consummate parts of it. You just need a lot of patience. Ah, yes, it took about 2 hours to complete the soup, 45 minutes to start the caramelization. Yep, that sounds about right. Ugh, Alexa, stop. Oh, I'm so sorry. Buddy, what an interruption. And then here's your final product, your lovely French onion soup. When I was a kid and I saw French onion soup on a menu, I would always eat the toast off the top. And then my mother would be like, you're supposed to eat the rest of the soup. And I'm like, all I want's the toast soaking in a bunch of beef broth. Yeah, beef broth is so good in it. Though I've done a mushroom version before. I've done a vegetarian version of French onion, which you can do. It just requires a little change in the broth. That's all. But this looks lovely. Great job. What kind of cheese did you use? Yes, the toast is so yum. I agree. Let's see. Robert, who's also in the chat, we got a chicken burrito bowl. This is gorgeous. Huge fan of Fritos. Huge fan. Chris, does this speak to any part of you since you are from Texas?
It's a lot of parts of this. The Fritos most specifically. I made a Frito pie not too long ago also.
Oh, the best.
Unfortunately, I bought chili that had beans in it, so it was like not really a true.
Not real to
one.
you, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't make it in the bag of Fritos also.
Yes.
So. But yeah, like some Fritos and avocados together, and like that's all. I know avocado is probably more of a California thing, but you know, your general Tex-Mex kind of cuisine, we're allowed to get a little bit of avocado credit too.
We got a rating from Dandy in the Bronx. Wow, Fritos, 11 out of 10. Yes. Following up from earlier, Gwem says it's Gruyere cheese. Yum. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then spoiler, Robert says there's beans and rice in there too. Maybe some artichoke hearts. Is that why you have artichoke hearts on the brain? We've mentioned artichoke hearts several times in the past couple of weeks, which is really funny. And when you sent me this photo, you said, I wish I could show you a cross section. And that reminded me of the book Modernist Cuisine. Did you ever hear about this, Chris?
No.
This book? Not. It's a $600 volume. So it's like it's just a lot of molecular gastronomy and showing all of the techniques that modern chefs are using. Mm-hmm. And they have these very famous cross sections of scientific things happening. So they cut a grill in half so that you could show the charcoal reaching, whatever, and then fire. So they have these hilarious cross sections that you normally would not be able to show in the cooking process.
That's pretty cool. I would like to have that if I had $600 lying around for a food encyclopedia, I guess.
It's a very designy book.
It sounds right up my alley a little bit.
Yeah. But I don't know if I would make a lot of the stuff in it because it's like really fancy fine dining.
Yeah.
Shmas, I don't think is here yet, but Shmas told us about his plant nook. It looks like the mint and the dill are going off. You got some hydroponics here with your succulents. Like, we don't really talk about farming on this stream, but because we're all at home, the home growing is becoming a thing, and so it's really cool to see people trying different systems. Because last week we talked a lot about with the difference between local and regional and global food systems. And there's nothing more local than inside your house.
I just planted some herbs like this past week, actually.
You did? What did you plant?
Some rosemary, some basil, and a different kind of basil that's like purple.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
One's purple and one's like lemon basil. So.
Yum. That's really great. Yeah. Hey, Damage Cap, thanks for following. Is that you, Scott? I haven't seen you in a minute. Thanks for following. And then we also had another entry from Shmas here. We've got a beautiful homemade vegetarian ramen. I think that's seared tofu there. Shmas is a little bit of I think in my chat, Shmas is a little bit of a user celebrity. So like, not streaming, but Every time Shma sends these photos, they're just gorgeous and amazing. So this looks great. I would.
Good layout on this, by the way.
I know, right? It's very well centered. You've got the chopsticks and alignment with the dishcloth.
You established a symmetry and then added like one element to break it. I like
There
it.
you go. See, this is why we have you on the show today. This is exactly why we have you on the show today. Oops. I accidentally might have deleted someone's comment in the chat. I'm really sorry if that was you. That was an accidental swipe on my part. But look at how rich that broth is.
Yeah.
It looks like a tonkatsu, but it has no pork whatsoever.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize that did not look like it was going to be vegetarian.
Yeah, I know. It kind of looks like Spam too on the side, but I don't think it's Spam at all. You got bamboo shoot there. Those eggs also look gorgeous and like soy marinated. Thank you, Shmas, for sending that in. If you in the chat would like to be featured again in this part of the stream, we love showing off your cooking photos. You can tag me on Instagram, tag me on Twitter @Randwiches, and we will talk about your food and cheer you on because that's what we like to do. But speaking of tonkatsu and Japanese food, Chris, do you want to talk me through some of these photos that you sent? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, so this was Kobe beef. We were in Kobe, Japan. And
wait, what?
Yes.
You had the massaged cow?
Yes. This was the real deal. This might be one of the more expensive meals I've ever had, and it was just for a random lunch.
Oh my God.
No, I mean, not random in that we went to Kobe for lunch. So, yeah, that is like authentic Kobe steak right there. On like sort of a bed of like onions and like, you know, they include these vegetables, which are also like very, very good, but it's sort of, you know, the star of the show.
You're here for the steak. Wow.
Yeah. And
incredible.
They pre-cut it for you and everything too. So it's like they dole out how big a bite should be. So you're kind of savoring every single moment of that stuff. It's on a cast iron skillet also.
Like TGI Fridays style or Chili's.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ikinari, but
what?
If you're in New York, Ikinari Steakhouse.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, they're pretty good. It's like a Japanese place you order by the gram, and yeah. Tipping is forbidden, and they don't have seats. You stand to eat. But
interesting.
Yeah, you get it in like a cast iron skillet with some like onion and corn and everything. And then like they've got the different sort of dipping sauces too.
Oh, fun. So, I love it.
Yeah, it's totally worth checking out. And like this was, you know, I mean, Ikinari's no being in Kobe.
Sure.
But similar thing with the dipping sauces there. I forget now what they were.
That's okay.
Specifically, but like I think they were different levels of like intensity for the sort of steak sauce. And so like kind of found which one you liked and like used that one, but also like just a little bit because the meat was so good on its own that it just sort of was kind of magical. So
it was magical for you.
Oh, it was incredible.
The beef, yeah. So for people who don't know what Kobe beef is, it is a notoriously expensive beef from Japan. And the whole point of it is that the cows are not stressed out. Like they're massaged, they are well taken care of, they eat in open pasture, they're like relaxed cows. Because the cows in the US are not treated very well. They're packed in facilities. Sometimes they don't even get to see the sun. That's why organic and local farm-raised animals are super important, so you know where they're coming from and how they're treated. But Kobe beef has a very unique texture and flavor. They have the things that they eat are what they're putting in their body and sort of imparts that flavor on the meat. And then the most important thing is the marbling, the fat marbling. So they're relaxed cows and they're getting massaged all the time. And so their fat distribution is kind of swirled throughout. It's not like a workhorse where it's just like toning a muscle, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so expensive.
No, and that marbling was definitely, I mean, you could tell just in the texture that it was like like more tender and softer and just sort of melted in your mouth in a way like
Yeah.
no steak I've ever had quite does. So.
Oh no, Scott is reporting that Ikinari, New York City is not reopening.
Oh
Sad
no,
face.
that's
Oh no.
disappointing.
I guess we'll just have to go to Kobe.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to go to Kobe.
Guess we'll just have to go to Japan. So your other, I'm gonna skip over some of the things you've made, but let's just keep talking about the travel food
Yeah,
here.
for
What's
sure.
this?
This was beef sashimi. This was raw beef.
Tataki is the name of it
Okay, I
in
don't
Japan.
remember that. I was in Sapporo because I went up to the north in Japan because it was my second time and I kind of wanted to go see Hokkaido and some of the northern areas. And I happened to be in Sapporo on at the tail end of their Oktoberfest celebration. Where
they do Oktoberfest?
Yes, which is very ironic to be in Sapporo, Japan, one of the famous brewing cities in the world, and everything being like these German and European Oktoberfest beer celebrations.
Oh, that's funny.
But so the city of Sapporo has this like really, really long, skinny park in it that kind of runs like the whole length of like the center of the city. And what they had set up there was basically a big food festival. It was a Hokkaido food festival. So
oh my God.
yeah, it was, I mean, Jen, you would have loved this. It was, they had these signs that were up where it showed on a map of just Hokkaido in Japan, which town each food stand was from.
Oh, cool.
And like they had their local specialty and just like, I mean, block after block of these kind of like little stands, like it'd be food in one block and then like drinks on the next one or something. And then,
oh, fun.
and it would just like alternate for like different regions of Hokkaido. So yeah, I tried a bunch of stuff there that I wasn't entirely sure. You know, you kind of go there and you're like, well, I wish I was gonna be here. I wish I'd planned a whole week around this because like you can only eat or drink so much.
It's true. I have that experience when I go to expos or conferences for food, and like there are 2,000 booths and you want to snack on every single one, and it's really hard. You have to be really picky about what you're like, what avenue are you going to follow here?
Right.
You know,
you kind of like, I remember specifically kind of looking for the stuff that seemed strangest.
Yeah.
And like most off the beaten path, or like I had like a weird ramen that had like a sort of like potato foam on top or something.
Cool.
Like I said, like trying all of the local mixed drinks and like I said, that's where when I saw raw beef sashimi from a food stand on the street, I was like, all right, this is,
it has to be killer. It had to be killer. Had to be really good.
Yeah. No, it was really good. It's much different from like yeah, it's an interesting texture eating raw beef. It's just not something we do here, but
yeah, the beef in Japan is at a much higher quality and is regulated a little bit better than it is here. And so I wouldn't advise going out to the grocery store in the US and just buying any beef and eating it raw. I would go for a prime grade beef, or like you know, to a butcher shop where you can talk to the person who's actually going to cut it for you, because they can advise you whether or not you should eat something raw or not. Okay, let's do another photo. I have to go get this cake out of the oven, but can you start talking about this one?
Yes. Okay, so this is another specialty in northern Japan in Hokkaido. So they call this Mongolian beef. It's on this weird little domed grill that I think they call it Mongolian beef because it's supposed to be shaped like a Mongolian hat. I'm not entirely 100% sure on that, but I was in this little hole in the wall place. There was a bunch of old business guys that were eating alongside me, so I was watching what they did and just sort of copying along. So you get these little strips of meat, you drape them over the top of this dome, and then the fat sort of runs off and down into the edges where they put, you put vegetables and things like that. So I've
never had this.
Yeah, so I just had like bean sprouts as the vegetable around the bottom. So the oil kind of runs down there and like sautés the vegetables while the meat cooks, and then you just pull the strips off and then have it. So I think I got venison was the first one I got. And it was like, I had no idea, you know, when I was ordering, I was kind of, the menus in Japanese, and I didn't really, like, I was sort of trying to figure out from pictures and prices what was what. So like at first I got like some, you know, real good, like little strips of beef, or I guess beef or venison. I think it was venison.
A very unique taste.
Yeah. It was
Gamey.
definitely like a little bit, whatever I had was like kind of gamey.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was sort of like, okay, that was like not much. And like, I'm kind of here. This is one of the like famous foods of Hokkaido. It's a thing they're like, oh, you got to try, especially if you're in this particular city. And like in Japan, you can kind of tell in a hole in the wall with a bunch of old business guys eating there. You're like, this is probably the real deal.
Yeah.
So I ordered another thing, and I was trying to not break the bank because it was early in my trip still. We were going down to Tokyo later, so I was trying not to spend everything in the first week. So I got something on the menu being like, all right, that seems about a reasonable price. It turns out this was deer hearts. So yeah, this is deer heart on the grill, and it's definitely a stranger flavor, but like I actually really, it's one of those things you eat it and you go, that's a little bit odd. I'm not totally sure about it, but I want to have another piece and see.
And then you ended up liking it.
I ended up liking it. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I definitely think it's a thing that you that's an occasional food, not something you'd want to eat a whole pile of. But
yeah,
it ended up being like, again, it was one of those strange finds that I was not expecting, but you know, when you're traveling, that's kind of what you're doing. So
yeah. I miss that about traveling. And I'm sorry, I might have missed, was there a specific name for this kind of grill, or like
yeah, so they call this Mongolian beef. It's just the sort of generic name for it. And I was saying I think the idea is like this sort of hat with like the dome on the top and then like the fold up around, I think is supposed to be like a Mongolian hat. Or sorry, they call it, I'm saying Mongolian. It's Genghis Khan beef.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's pretty, you know, and the pronunciation is more like you can figure it out from a menu if you speak like or if you can read katakana or something. So it's like Genghis Khan or something. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, catching up in the chat from Robert, a question. What's the difference between beef sashimi and beef tartare? Underneath your beef sashimi, was there rice?
There was, yes.
There was. So it was more of a nigiri style that had rice, because sashimi doesn't have rice.
Right.
But I think that tataki, like the Japanese style of raw beef service, is about slicing it super thin.
Yes.
And showcasing the texture of it. Like that bite is supposed to be very tender. Beef tartare is usually chopped or minced in a smaller pieces and then mixed with herbs and maybe a quail egg sometimes. But yeah, the tartare is a different cut altogether, but still the same, you know, raw beef. Good question. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. What's going on here? You went to a baseball game?
I went to a Hanshin Tigers baseball game.
Is this a cute little bento?
So yes, that's a little bento box. I was like, you know, just like you're at the ballpark, so you're gonna get, you know, like what's a traditional Japanese ballpark hot dog equivalent?
It's not a hot dog, it's a bento.
A little bento box with some beef, I think some kimchi, a little bit of. My favorite thing about it is that they take the little. I'm blanking on the seafood. What's the dried seaweed?
Yeah, the seaweed. Yeah, the nori.
But yes, thank you, nori. And that they can print on it. So they put their top player's uniform number on it, which I think is just super cool. And it comes with, you know, very typical Japanese like soft-boiled eggs. So you break the egg and get, you know, just sort of gooey egg yolk all in the rice with the beef and
fun.
You know, like this is and you know, it's funny because they did have like sausages and hot dogs and stuff there, but it was like it was really cool to be at a ball game and have like, all right, there's like my American expectations, and then here's like, and then here's what the locals are like. Oh, you know what? I just want to go to a ball game and have a rice box with some raw.
That's awesome. I mean, I hear that the experience at a Japanese baseball game is completely different. Like the vibe, like they have songs and
Yes.
like
Oh, constantly. They don't stop.
everybody's participating, you know?
Yeah. They chant constantly, and then there's different there's like they're at when they're batting, there's like one chant. There's a different like chant for when they're on defense. There's a song for a base hit. There's a song for a run scored. And it's just like the whole crowd just sort of like constantly transitions from one into the next one.
That's so cute. They like know the catalog of songs.
Yeah. Like by the end, I was like kind of learning, like I like learning them after one game there. My favorite thing too is at where we have like the seventh inning stretch or like a few different like ball game traditions. For the Hanshin Tigers, one of theirs is, which I had no idea what was happening. All these people started pulling out these long yellow balloons.
Oh yeah, the clappy balloons.
Yeah, so like those things you kind of bang together, but what they actually do is like inflate them all together at one point and then wave them around, and then everybody lets them go at once. And so the entire stadium is these sort of phallic giant yellow balloons that go rocketing in. I have an amazing video of what it looks like because they also make a sound when they release.
Oh, of course, it's like
yes, just this like squealing, high-pitched
oh, that's
sea
funny.
of like yellow, long shapes flying through the air and like landing all over the place.
That's so jaunty and cute. My goodness.
There were a couple of women next to me that like, I was very obviously a foreigner coming to a baseball game in Osaka. And like when that started happening, I was looking around and they saw me and were just cracking up and laughing with me at like how confused I was by what was going on. So yeah.
So funny. Wow.
Yeah, really
cool. And then what is this?
So this is also from that. So
the street fair.
Yeah, the street fair had they had an area that was like these sort of like special guest chefs area where like every day there was a different guest chef there doing like a small limited menu kind of thing. And so this was like a really like a roast beef kind of thing, like in a dark wine sauce.
Woo!
It was absolutely incredible and delicious. Oh, and sort of like a potato. What do you call it when you turn it into like an almost like it's like this velvety smooth texture?
Oh, it's just mashed potatoes.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it's like
it just has a lot of butter, and it's probably been run through a food mill, which makes it really super smooth.
Yeah. It was like there's something. I feel like there was like I don't know, compote or something. That seems like something that a food person would call this. But yeah, it just, it was only a few bites. One of the more expensive things I had there, but like still, street food prices. But yeah, it just sort of like, again, it was one of the things that just like sort of fell apart when you bit into it. And was so good. Just a really good, like, savory, like I said, that sort of combination of like the meat juices and the wine and the sauce that it was in was just like really, really incredible. It was one of those things you wanted to lick the plate, but you were in Japan and trying
to not proper. Welcome to the chat, Phil Lynn. Welcome. It does look good, doesn't it? And I learned that there was one of the shows from Samurai Gourmet, the show that Robert had recommended to all of us, that there is a huge French influence in Japan in some ways that they've cooked things. So this is based on a beef bourguignon, which is like a red wine braised beef.
I think you're right. I think that's what it was. I don't think I would have remembered that if you hadn't said that.
Awesome. Okay, and then you had some things that you made. So you made this.
Yeah,
what's going on here?
I thought I needed a picture of something I made. So that's some like that's a bourbon chicken with like
yum.
Yeah, like a honey bourbon chicken with some roasted green beans and mashed potatoes. Which is, again, it's one of those meal kit kind of things, but it was good enough that it was a cooked applesauce
I love those.
Yeah, so like a diced apple on top with I'm trying to remember what else was in there, but like some sugar and scallions in it. It's one of those things I remember learning a long time ago that like apples and onions taste weirdly similar when you cook them like alongside each other.
They caramelize. They both do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a restaurant near where I live in Bushwick that used to do like an apple and onion tart. It sounded so gross to me on the menu, but then I tried it and I was like, this is actually incredible. So
Yeah, it's so good.
yeah, so like that chicken with like the sort of like bourbon brown sugar sauce and the apple and onion reduction kind of stuff on it was like really, really good. And that was like, I don't know, that was one of the first meals I cooked in a while. So I was like, hey, I can do this. And yeah, it's
Awesome.
not the best food photography, but
Don't worry, you can leave that to me.
yeah.
I'm going to show you a lot of photos in a minute. And then you sent this one kind of as a joke.
Yes, this is a typical New York advertising. This was in the middle of a major campaign launch where someone at the office ordered a huge amount of Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
Oh my God.
This may not have even been a fresh. This may have been a like the next night when we remembered there was still leftover Chick-fil-A in the fridge. So yeah, you can see the plating is expertly done on. The one good thing about advertising is that there's usually some booze floating around, especially if you're stuck there working at 2 a.m. So yeah, like a good white wine, because you when you have chicken,
gotta wash down all that salt.
Yeah.
This is hilarious.
Yeah.
But also real life, Thanks for sharing that little snapshot.
Yeah. The Chick-fil-A does come with a great story of our old editor had never had Chick-fil-A.
Oh.
And so he was trying it and going like, also don't endorse Chick-fil-A, just someone in the office bought it, it was, but he was saying like, I've never had Chick-fil-A, but this is pretty good. And then proceeded to tell the story of when he was growing up, like the process of how you kill a chicken.
Oh no.
So he was talking about how you wring the chicken's neck properly, chop it off. And we were like, cool story, Dave.
Cool story. I'm gonna eat this chicken sandwich now.
Yeah. But I don't know. He's just an old guy that has always got, he's got some stories.
Sure, he's got yarns.
Yeah, his own life and travels are way more interesting than mine, I'm sure.
Well, this was a really good mix of travel, which is making me miss that, and home cooking, and then work food. So thank you for sending all of those over.
No problem.
Friends in the chat, if you would like to be featured in this portion of the show, I love showing off your cooking photos. You can tag me on Instagram and Twitter. Again, my username is Randwiches. I'll put that in the chat later. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because we're going to move on to the new part of the show. I just want to make sure I have the right things open. Let me see if I can do that. Perfect. But yeah, so usually around this time is when we ask the chat for questions about today's topic, and today's topic is about food and design. You can still ask questions, but I decided to make some slides. And I'm going to share my screen again. I just want to make sure that I had it right. Can you see this? Can you see our flyer? It's cool. Yeah. Great. So, I made some slides so that Chris can take a look at. Basically, we're looking at my portfolio. Is basically what we're looking at. Hey, so I'm a food stylist. And what that means is I am hired by publications and cookbooks to make food look appetizing. So there are different ways that we do that. And there are different schools of thought when it comes to styling food. Back in the 80s, when this was like kind of a hot shot, like Hollywood kind of gig. And some of those jobs still exist, but it created this school of thought that we're going to fake everything. We're going to make it look as appetizing as possible by making it look as unreal as possible. So all of the ice cream scoops were like sculpted matter, or pizza was plastic. It took 3 days for like Pizza Hut to do a single cheese pull because they wanted to get the physics and the stretchiness right. So that's one school of food styling. I'm in the more realist school of food styling, where we don't fake anything. We make everything a la minute. So a la minute means of the minute, like right now. So when a photographer is getting ready for a shot, we are staging some fake plates first. And then when they're ready for the hot food, we'll bring it in. And I'll have 4 or 5 versions of it ready to go, so that if that shot doesn't work out or the ice cream melts, then I have another one ready. Yeah, or that, So that's kind of what one of my jobs is. So in the publishing world, a lot of the cookbook publishing process is subdivided into many different jobs. So like much like how Chris works at an agency, there's the graphic designer that does the layout of the book. There's the food stylist who works with the photographer to make sure it looks good. Then there's the author, and there's a recipe tester, and there's prop stylist. There's like a whole bunch of jobs. So when I'm on set, I'm usually two people at once, which is the stylist and the tester, because I've written the recipe, which is not a typical situation. Most of the time, that's a separate job. But that's essentially what it is. And so we're going to look through some of the work and talk about what kinds of things am I latching onto design-wise. Because, spoiler, I've never been trained in this stuff whatsoever. I just know what I think looks yummy. And that's kind of been the driving force of my career. I don't know. Chris, what is your perception of like food media these days?
So I know that it's moved mostly into like blogs and everything. I know everybody likes to complain about the first part of recipes where someone writes personal stuff about it.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
You're getting your recipe for free, by the way.
No.
What's a little bit of scrolling? And it's kind of a broken system, because these people are doing that because they worked on the recipe for free and paid the money out of their own pocket to get all the ingredients and spent the time to make sure the recipe works. It also sucks that you need that long bit of text, not because people need it. People do need it, they want to read the story and the context sometimes, but because of SEO. SEO rewards keyword repetition.
Right.
And so bloggers have been trained to write that really long missive because it'll move their recipe up in the Google ranking. And that's just not how you should be publishing things in general. Like, I wish the system wasn't abusive like that.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I was gonna, like, as soon as you started saying that, I was like, oh, I bet SEO. So,
yeah, which is kind of why I started a Patreon, because I'm not putting my recipes up for free. And it's kind of an alternative way to support the work that I'm doing as like a recipe developer. But anyway, this was one of my most popular Instagram posts. I'm sorry, you can still see the overlay of the carousel on there. But this is lechon kawali, which is a Filipino pork dish. It's pork belly that's been double fried. And then we got it on a banana leaf on a white plate and a surface. Like, why was this one of my top posts of last year?
So the first thing is like there's a real striking like silhouette of that banana leaf.
Yeah.
You've got kind of like a contrast in shapes thing happening there of the perfectly round thing with the sort of angle going through it. And then like the other thing is like the sort of texture where you've got like that real the real close-up view of the meat, which like I can see people liking this on Instagram just because it's like, oh, that looks like some really good fall apart in your mouth like fried meat.
I think you can hear it when you look at it.
Yeah.
And
then sitting on this really, really contrasty smooth green surface there too.
Yeah.
I think there's something like appetizing about that, like the contrast in textures, which is a big thing in food. I don't know.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah. And then like I said, the color contrast, just that being such a, like I can see even on a small screen, there's like a really like that shape is just super like it just reads really, really quickly.
Yeah, and that's another thing as we'll go through these photos. We're starting in the digital world.
Mhm,
So this is for Instagram, which is smaller and tends to be a little compressed. Not
mhm.
as bad as Twitter, but yes, thank you. Great. Informative. Catching up in the chat here, yeah, regarding the blog discussion earlier, it's absolutely the web being broken. It affects nearly everything that's published for free, quotation marks,
Mhm.
and can't blame the writers for it. Gotta survive somehow. Absolutely. And that's why affiliate links from Amazon are so popular. Having to put banner ads and stuff, like I didn't want to deal with that, so that's why I started a Patreon, which is completely
Mhm.
different, and very sustainable, I think. But yes, thank you. Feedback about this one. Okay, so this is my other one, my other really popular post.
Mhm.
It's my hand.
Mhm.
And I think there are several things at play here. It's a novel idea, which
Mhm.
is an everything bagel hard boiled egg.
Okay.
You make a little sprinkle and then you can just dip your hard boiled eggs in it and then
Mhm.
crunch on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's all the thought I put into it. I was just
Right.
holding it. I was just holding it and showing you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
No, it's great because this is again like there's symmetry and contrast going in this in a way of like, all right, there's two things that are like one, you've got like a 45-degree angle splitting them, which by the way, in art design, like horizontal lines tend to be like stability and staticness. Vertical lines
Oh,
tend to read as strength. That's why a lot of men's shirts you'll see vertical stripes on them. Makes you look a little bit
interesting.
taller, and it's more of a like trees, like strong, tall, upright. That's just sort of a thing. If you're like think of like the horizon of an ocean versus like the like the like old redwood forest trees or something
I
like
never knew that.
you have sort of like peace this way, strength this way, and then
Cool.
diagonal is like dynamism, like excitement, like off kilter. And like
Oh
so
my.
the I mean one place you see that a lot too is in I forget the exact name for it, but in a film when they tilt the camera a little bit and you've got the sort of off angle thing that's like a disorienting thing, or action scenes are shot at angles and stuff like that a lot. But just compositionally, like diagonals usually feel much more like dynamic and exciting. So you've got this like
Oh,
45-degree angle
fun.
symmetry running right through this thing.
And it's
um,
really, really subtle, but I don't know if you can see on the bottom egg. I
mhm,
used the serrated knife.
yes. Yeah, no. Um, that's like that's another thing of like I think texture is going to come up a lot in food photography. So there's the like in art, this is like very like art school 101 stuff, but it's like there's 7 core elements of art. They're line, shape, form. So that's like line work. Um, Shape is basically like enclosed lines. Form is basically the 3D version of shape. Usually you're talking about sculpture or something, or space, which is like where elements are in relation to each other. So again, here you've got them like close, but with like enough separation and kind of their position relative to each other. And then lastly, you have value, which is lightness and darkness, basically, luminosity, we'd call it these days, color, and texture. Um, and like, I mean, there's a thing I like in this a lot is that so you get texture on both of these. You've got like the serrated knife texture and the sort of eel in the bottom one. And then you have a completely different like contrasting texture of like all these like little speckledy bits. And then even within those speckledy bits, there's the black and white, HA value contrast. And like,
You're
um,
like, what? Explaining my photos back to me. This is insane.
yeah.
Ah,
So a dynamic layout with like symmetry and like contrast between the two things, but then in one of them, like another nested layer of contrast in there. Like,
where the hell did I learn that?
there's
I
a
don't.
there's a rule in art that is we call it like the 55-5 rule, which is something that's readable at like 50 feet away in a piece, like what you see it from really far away. The 5 feet away rule, where it's like you get the sort of like overall thing, and then the 5 inches rule, where it's like if you're looking up really close, that's where those lines and like the bottom egg of like this, you know, the serrated knife stripes that go through it and give it its own special texture. Like at first you read it and go like, ah, smooth egg, bumpy egg, and then you look closer and you're like, oh, actually, and like
Actually, no.
they're both textured very subtly. It's like that's your, like, first you get the big overall like diagonal layout, then you get like, you know, like the contrast between the two, and then you get like the details like layered down within each one individually. So yeah, you're kind of nailing the different scales.
So what you're saying is I'm a design genius.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Catching up here in the chat. Hey Shmas, good to see you. We talked about your hydroponic nook earlier with your mint and your dill, as well as your vegetarian ramen, which is very gorgeous. Thanks for sharing those with us. But if you're just joining in on the stream, we are going through some of my portfolio pieces from my food styling work and seeing if there are any design elements that I'm sort of subconsciously or unknowingly holding on to here. And Chris just blew my mind because I had no idea these are things that people practice. It's just, I thought that it looked good, so I made it that way. So there's a lot of these. So the purpose of a lot of food styling varies from piece to piece. Like it depends on, if we're writing a recipe piece, then we want to be illustrative about the cooking steps. If we're doing a service piece, we want to show people enjoying a service or like being part of a community. This was a very specific use case. This was a product shoot. So this was for a community, community source agriculture for a CSA of meat. So they did not want to show raw meat. So we had to show the meat in its best form possible. And so we decided a quadrillage, which is the styling, the grill style here, where you sear it on one angle, turn it 45 degrees and sear it the other angle. And so we get these cross hatches here. And we wanted to show the butter because otherwise it would have looked like just a dry steak with just some salt. I do think that the rosemary was a little too, I thought that was erroneous, like I didn't need it. But somebody wanted some kind of color there. But this was to show off in a catalog.
Okay.
That's what that was for.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of horizontal and then the crosshatch.
I was gonna say, so like the first thing that I see this, I'm like, oh, this looks like a very zen piece of meat. Yes. And it's
a well cared for cow.
Yes.
Is exactly.
So like all these like horizontal elements, like you said, like that's why it has this like, oh, like peacefulness is kind of the first read I get on this thing. You've got this like white background, like natural, probably
very
bamboo,
natural
I'm
light.
Guessing.
Huh?
Is it bamboo? The surface?
Yeah. It's bamboo cutting board.
Yeah. And then like even the meat itself is like oriented horizontally. And then you've got I like the rosemary.
You actually like the rosemary?
Yeah. Because it's sort of like horizontal, but then sort of like zips up and does like.
Yeah, I see that. It's pretty, but for me as the stylist, I don't think it's realistic. Like it's just sitting there. It's like not garnished on.
Yeah.
Like it's not part of the dish. Like that's what's bugging me about it.
This is a food criticism in that like it's not actually affecting anything about the flavor because it's not even touching it.
It's not even even part of it. It's just funny.
As a design element, I love it.
All right.
It breaks your pure, because like one of the things you have is like if everything's always horizontal, then it's like, all right, that's a very sort of singular read. But when everything's horizontal with like one accent thing, you could argue that it makes the rosemary the star of the show because it's the one thing breaking it.
Sure.
But because you've got like the diagonal lines on the meat and everything, there's sort of something else mimicking that. Also just like color wise, right? It's very like
Yes.
very light, very pastel. Like this is like to me, like if you were looking for like peace in a food shot, like
It's very peaceful.
yeah, exactly.
Catching up here in the chat, Shamas asked, did you grill it for real or did you use one of those hot wires to make the crosshatch? We grilled it for real. You weren't here for the beginning of our chat, but I am part of the realist school of food styling. I like to cook my food for real when I'm on set. I'm not part of the 80s, 90s fake the fake the shot. But I've done it before for some things. Like I've put salt in a beer to make it fizz up for a shot. You know, if you ever want to have a really nice photo of a beer foaming, you throw some salt in it, but then don't drink it because it'll
the
be
fact that it's all edible, I think you get credit for that. You're not putting like,
yes,
epoxy on strawberries.
because we're not wasting it.
Mhm.
A lot of the time, publications will throw all that food away, but me, I'm like, no, I'm taking that home. That's my dinner. No way. Yes, yes. Follow up here. Thank God. I've seen too many styling videos where they put like insane chemicals all over good food, and I'm like, why? Yeah, it's very wasteful. And fake. Like you're trying to sell an image to people that isn't real. And when they get it at home, they're like, doesn't look anything like that. What are you talking about?
Mhm. I'm of the
Um,
opposite school of thought where we did an arcade cabinet where we made a cake out of wood
oh,
glue. That's a
yes.
whole other
Oh,
thing.
we got to tweet that later. The arcade. We made an arcade cabinet cake, or you did. I mean,
Yeah,
uh, and it was gorgeous. You did a really good piping job with a caulking gun.
thank you. You just go to the hobby store, buy some cake tips, and put it over a caulking gun, and you can seal up your shower real fancy, like if you wanted to, I guess.
Gilding, yeah. This was a really fun one for the blog. My friend Lara helped me shoot some photos, and then she added a bunch of graphical elements to it, which I thought was really cute. For the vibe that we were doing. We were just doing a digital like just carousel of recipes, and
Yeah.
so 5 of them, they each had their own color blocks. So this one was purple, there was like lime green for another, and yellow, and
Mhm.
it really captured for me the essence of like the Filipino tropical
Mhm.
like situation.
Yeah.
But now that you mentioned all these lines and angles, all I can see are the lines and angles from the striation of the beef to the rack that it's sitting on to the graphic element behind it. Like so
Yeah.
now it's there's just so much so many lines.
Yeah. Here, what's cool in this one is you've got like a real contrast between like mechanical inorganic and organic. So you've literally got this thing sitting on like a metal grid, and then but the meat stripes itself is like this very like organic wavy kind of texture. So again, you're getting like a cool little contrast there. You've got the sort of like square edges on the round plate, and you've got the soup like a grid, like the most structured thing you could have really, like overlaid by these like very very flowy organic kind of lines on the meat. And like the fact that you're shooting the meat really close up so that all that detail comes out makes me feel like there's intentionality behind that. So, like, I think you know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
the background's fun because it's also like, it's sort of geometric, but a little bit off kilter too. So it's
Yeah.
like, you've kind of got like the two extremes in the foreground and in the background being like a little bit of a midway between them of like that grid getting playful.
Yeah.
I think there's something cool going on with the color here too, of um, like the light purple and the red in the meat. So one of the big things with color is that color is almost always like perceived very relatively. Like
Mm.
you could take the same, you've probably seen like these optical illusions on like the internet or something of where you put like, or you put the same color on 2 different backgrounds and they look like completely different colors.
Ah,
And
yeah.
like, yeah, so like our perception of like what looks red is going to be really really changed by what the background is.
This is
Like,
relevant actually to some upcoming.
I
Actually,
bet,
like
yeah.
we're gonna skip this. I'm gonna go to it and show you what I mean. So this is for that same CSA
Mhm.
company.
Yep.
So we have the same spread on
Mhm.
2 different.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so there's two very different things happening with it. So there's no people in this one.
Hmm.
Even though it's like a big communal lamb leg. It's
Hmm.
very large. And then we have a lot of action in this one.
Yeah.
But they convey two very different moods.
Yeah. Like dark background definitely reaches like elegance. I think
Yeah.
that's like kind of a thing. I think that comes from, so we typically think of having dark spaces as like, if you're gonna paint a wall dark or something, like when we're in our small little apartments here in New York City, you're like, keep the walls white so that it's bright because we're fighting for any light we can get. But if you live in a big mansion, then with giant windows, and it's like, oh, well, you can like afford to have some like dark surfaces that sort of eat up the light a little bit and like still not feel like you're like super claustrophobic. Like if you didn't have good windows and you painted your room all dark colors, then it would be like very, very dim. Um, but the other thing is that dark colors tend to recede visually. So like something that is darker feels like it's further away versus something that's lighter feels like it's a little bit more in your face.
Yeah.
That's like
Like,
that's just like kind of how like human perception works generally. Like you if something is well illuminated and close like or closer to you, or if it's like you're perceiving more light bouncing off of it, I think is the like literal what's going on. Um, so yeah, like you kind of like, I think you do switch back to the dark one.
mm-hmm.
It's interesting because there's more like it feels like you're pushed back a little bit from it, I think, just emotionally. Like there's a little more emotional distance, even though there's like hands and people and everything.
Yeah.
Um, this is like, yeah, this is very like wait, when you're trying to pick photos for something, you kind of have to have these discussions around it.
Yeah. Like what mood are we trying to go for? Are we
Yeah,
what element are we trying to sell here?
right.
Like
But
is
like
it
it does make
featured?
the
Yeah.
yeah, this makes like the the dishes pop really well against the dark background too. So like it really like frames them really well. If you go back to the light one,
Hmm.
yeah, and the light one you kind of like the dishes sort of recede into it, and so you're probably getting more of a silhouette on the food itself versus like on the dark one you're getting the sort of like an extra layer of like there's like, all right, black surface, white plate, dark food on top of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's not that one's better or worse than the other. It's just a matter of like what your goals are for the
Yeah.
photograph.
Yeah. What are we trying to communicate with it?
Yeah, yeah. So like this
Hmm.
one feels like, I don't know. All right, this is maybe me, but I'm like, this one feels like, oh, this is my tabletop, and the other one feels a little bit more like, oh, this is someone's tabletop.
Someone else's.
I
That's
can see their
funny.
hands.
I mean, yeah, this was for an Easter special
Mhm.
campaign, and so it was meant to showcase the lamb leg, which is
Yeah,
not really a common meat cut.
yeah, right.
uh,
Which one is your choice for this?
I think just because of their style guide, they went with the light one
Okay,
for
that makes
newsletter.
yeah, that makes sense to me for like an Easter kind of thing.
Yeah. This is very like Easter sunshine, gonna
Right,
go
right.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of like food photography kind of usually you're shooting it in a more light and airy context.
Yeah.
That always feels like, lightness is freshness, kind of like visually.
That's kind of, yeah, that's kind of the practice that was enforced on me when I was
Right, right. Like,
learning.
yeah, there's something like really nice and sophisticated about like the dark one.
Yeah.
But like I'm imagining your clients being like, we just, it's like this feels too dreary,
This is
right?
very goth, yeah. Very romantic.
Mhm.
So I realized I put a ton of these. We're probably gonna have to get to all of them. Oh, catching up here in the chat with Scott. Do either of you? Oh no, sorry. The lighter one looks like it's food up on a countertop at a party. True, where you get up and get your food, then maybe go outside. The darker one looks like it's out on a table at a restaurant. Yeah, that does convey the two different moods for sure.
Yeah, yeah. A sophisticated place versus like a home kind of place or
Yeah.
something. Not that your home's not sophisticated necessarily, but.
Shmas asks, do either of you have tips for lighting? I always find myself cooking my nice food at night, so I can't get a natural light. And I feel like most of the lights in my house are like yellow and make food look weird and dull. I also have that problem. I have one window where I take most of my photos during the day, but sometimes I'm working late and I just cannot get that natural light. So I have a Jenn pocket light that I actually use for this stream. I'll show you. I'll turn it off actually. I got mine from B&H. It looks like this. It's really small. It can hold battery for a long time, but you know, I have mine plugged in right now. But the thing I love about it is that it has cool and warm adjustment, so that you can not, you know, like I don't look all washed out. Like it's not just like a bare light bulb. And it has this really cool, not filter. What is it called? There's an actual name for it. The cloud diffuser. Thank you. That's the word. But yeah, the brand I use is Jenn, which is a Genary. But it is tough to light things at night. Just make sure that your stuff is not backlit. The light should be always never coming from behind. Well, and I have, you know, exceptions to that for different purposes. But that's kind of all I know about light. I wish I knew a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, a big thing is like avoiding harsh directional lights.
Yes.
Like having like, this is the thing in like game design, 3D stuff. You usually have like your key lights, and then you have like a fill light on the like kind of a 45-degree angle, and then you might do like a edge lighting at a real extreme angle or something. But generally, like avoiding like really harsh shadows from a single point light. A diffuser helps because it sort of scatters the lights.
Yeah.
Like a bare light bulb is just sort of a single point where like a shadow gets cast really hard from that. And like a diffuser, or having even just like more lights on in the room, gives you more light bouncing off of things. So it sort of diffuses the light. You've got light rays coming in from all different directions, and things will get softened up a little bit.
This is a little extreme, but there were some Twitch streamers who have tutorials about this on YouTube about how to light your stream. And there's one guy that had 3. So he had one behind him on the floor pointing up, and then he had one in his face, and then one in another angle over here. And so he was like lit on all sides and had this beautiful like magenta like blush also. Scott says you've got to put your food on a stool in a dark room with a single bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Yeah, expert advice there.
As a designer, it just depends on the goal of the piece.
Exactly. I mean, that could work in some cases. This is just an archive piece. This is actually one of my very first cheese boards that was ever photographed. You can see it's a little low quality photo, but the way that I was taught to style was just from my mentor, Monica Byrne. She told me she wants height and drama. She wants motion. And so a lot of my pieces look like drapery, like, or that, you know, the nuts are like falling in a waterfall, and the jam is always falling whenever I do things like that. So this is like one of my first pieces that wasn't for someone else. Like, you know, I wasn't working under another stylist. I wasn't like doing someone else's assignment, but this was like mine and my home. So I was very proud of it.
One of the things we talked about, or one of the things we haven't talked about much in the art elements that I was saying was like a placement, like a space, sorry, is like one of the key things. And this is a really good contrast to the other one we were just looking at, where in the other one you had like individual dishes placed like, with some separation between them. In this one, you've got everything sort of like crammed together. So like in the space, like literally things piled on top of each other. And I think I've other spreads of yours I've seen you do this before, like that sort of like height and drama thing. I totally see that. Yes, exactly.
Like this one.
But yeah, like I think there's a huge thing of like what you're doing there with that like pressing everything together or piling it up on each other, where like the nuts are, like you said, like cascading down. Even like in that previous one, like the leaves look like they're like dropping out of the bottom, flowing down kind
Yes,
of too,
they're
right?
growing downward. Yeah.
You've got all this like motion down, like it's a literal like waterfall of food. and, and I think that does something to create just a sense of like bounty and like,
Yes.
a cornucopia kind of thing. Like,
Mhm.
you see like grocery stores kind of set up their things like this too.
Oh yeah, a little bit in the produce section.
Yeah, like you kind of want to convey a sense of like more than enough. Like dig in, don't try to be like, like at a dinner party or get together, people are trying to be like overly polite, and you're always like, no, please eat. Like
Yeah.
too much food.
People are always afraid to touch my food first.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
always afraid.
Right.
This one was for a wedding upstate. My friend told me, could you bring a few snacks? And you can't tell me that.
Mhm.
I went to the farmer's market that morning. I picked up all this stuff. I filled an entire table, like a circular table. I filled it, and they got all these vintage plates from the thrift store. That's a secret. If anybody is planning a DIY wedding, go to thrift stores and just buy mismatched plates.
Cool.
Great. But yeah, I filled this table. It was really fun to put together. We've got a question here from LT. What are the struggles for beginner food stylists? I can tell you my personal struggles were finding client work and building the portfolio. So I have a really great portfolio now. I love my portfolio. But it was hard to get started, as with every career there is. It's hard to build your own voice, really, because the way that I started was under someone else. So my credits were always like assistant to so and so. And so I had to build a portfolio. It was just my stuff. And the only way that I could do that was actually to trade work with my friends. So I had friends come over who had nice cameras, and I would cook for them, and then they would shoot it, and I would kind of play around, and that became the beginning of my portfolio until publications and freelance opportunities sort of came my way, which was very exciting, but really hard to start out. You can't show people that you're a food stylist if you have no work. So I was volunteering left and right to do this for my friends' weddings, to just exercise with my photographer friends. Like, hey, I want to make a bunch of Filipino food. Can you come over and shoot it? I'll feed you and give you food for the whole week. So that's kind of how I got around that problem. And yeah, it's been a fun journey learning. This is a piece for Thrillist. You can see that like my specialty is in cheese and charcuterie. Just because I know how those ingredients behave. Cheese melts, meats get sweaty and shiny. So there are very specific things that we can do to prevent oxidization and from things looking slimy over time. But yeah, this one, I would never have picked this background.
Yeah.
They picked it.
Mm-hmm.
It
works.
It works. No, it does. I think it's because of the slate.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good like color contrast. And like, I think that sort of like real hot yellow green brings out like the blue colors in the slate, which then is like, makes the reds, like even in like the nuts and the breads, like it brings out the reds in those more to be on like a cool blue surface, makes the the warmth of those things really pop a lot more. Pop is something we say all the time in advertising. It's always good. You can never have enough of it.
Oh, we got JV in the chat. Hey, how you doing? Meat sweats, big pickle energy. Yes, it's true. And you would have some insight about this. We're talking about food and design and style. JV is a fellow designer. Gwem says the lamb leg you showed earlier looks delicious. Thank you very much. Yeah, usually this color connotates barf. But I think what really helps is the slate and our hands. This is a very common thing at food publications. I feel like I've mentioned this before, but if you work in a studio kitchen or at a test kitchen, it's a common thing to hear hands, like someone yelling hands across the studio because they're about to take a shot and they need a diverse amount of hands in the shot. So people drop what they're doing, grab a piece of the food, hold it for the shot, and then go back to what they were doing. Hey, hands!
Nice. That's
very funny.
Yeah. Usually adding a human element is something that's good. Hands are always like an expressive thing to have. Another thing that hands do here is like they give you a sense of scale. Like
Yes.
knowing how big or small something is like good for contextualizing, and like, you know, people know about how big people are, if nothing else. And so like, so it's a good way of like knowing, you know, like, oh, that cheese wheel is like, that's like a good size, like the size of like the palm of your hand, basically. Another thing that's going on here too, odd numbers of objects, almost always the better way to go in
Yes.
art stuff. Like whenever you have an even number of things, your brain is usually trying to find some form of symmetry, like the egg shot from earlier. Like cool, two things, very obvious symmetrical layout to it. If symmetry is not what you're going for, you almost always need to have an odd number of whatever the element is. I find that all the time accidentally doing a layout when I'm like how many of these photos or dots or whatever the heck it is that I'm like putting into a layout like feel right. And like usually with 3 you can have like all right, these 2 kind of do this one thing and this other one acts as an accent, or these 3 do this and these 2 are the accent. And like it lets you have some like, yeah, it lets you like deliberately build in a little bit of contrast or something. You know, you've got 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom here. And like so yeah, I bet that's a thing that you subconsciously do all the time.
Actually, yeah, I didn't realize that, but yes, it is a lot of odd numbers.
Yeah,
that's funny.
There's a nice thing too. Closure. Our brain completes shapes for us. A circle is the most like it's almost impossible to have any segment of a circle without your brain recognizing that it's a full circle with a piece of thing. There's an optical illusion of like, it's like a it's these circles with wedges cut out, and like there's 3 of them and they form a triangle, and your brain makes you like almost see the lines of the triangle because we read circles as such, like it's literally like visually it is a representation of wholeness and completeness.
Right.
And so like any chunk taken out of it is like like incompleteness or a thing missing from it, and you're looking to fill in that space somehow.
I see.
So there's like that wedge coming out of there is like, oh, there's a great like the reason that feels like, oh, what's like an action shots. It's that you can almost feel that like this thing was a complete shape moments ago.
That fits there. Yeah, that fits right. You can see where it came from.
Yeah, that person could have been sitting there for an hour during this photo shoot, but when you get that photo, the viewer.
That's my hand.
Yeah. And
it was really funny because the overhead light, you can see that there are a lot of shadows here, right? So we're actually holding, and then we're all bent down away from the TV, which is not realistic at all. But to get the shot, that's how we had to be, which was so funny.
I'm curious too about that spread. How long was that spread position held for?
Not very long. It was like a few shutters though. Okay. So probably 15 shots.
Nice.
It was funny. This was for how to build a charcuterie board piece that I wrote. So, so I also write a lot about cheese, and in my limited design sense, I taught people how to plate cheese boards. And so this is a beginner board with beginner flavors and then a beginner layout, which is just straight up knolling.
That's right. That's exactly what this is.
Yeah. So knolling is lining things up so that you can see what you're working with that comes from the design world. But in this particular use case, I'm specifically I'm prescribing the pairings for you. So you
Oh,
can see that the apricot jam goes with the Humboldt fog. The pears have to go with that thing. And it's, I mean, when it comes to beginner stuff, like you're kind of scared to experiment sometimes. So I'm making it easy to understand, like that one goes with that one, that one.
yeah. Cool.
The things that bother me in this photo is the rind on the first cheese on the left starts to curl when it's been sitting out for a little too long,
Mhm.
and you can't fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you can see it starting to crack open, and I'm just like, please survive the shot,
Yeah.
please.
Nice. Well, I was not bothered by that.
Only I know, only I'm bothered by it.
That is an important aspect to know about any piece of art, is that you, the person closest to it, are most
Exactly.
intimately aware of all the flaws and problems. But
Exactly.
99% of people are not going to catch on to that.
Yes.
Remind
Yes,
me of this next time I'm working on a project, Jen.
I know. Shmas, that's correct. It is the one on the left has ash in it. It is called Humboldt Fog.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
I think
it's
I've had
available
that.
in most stores now, which is
Oh.
really great. Cypress Grove. Um, this is in another piece for the same magazine. It's for wine enthusiasts. So you can see that there's wine in both of these shots.
Mhm.
So this is for a different article, how to plate a charcuterie board with wine enthusiast.
Mhm.
And so this is the advanced level.
Gotcha.
So I did the same thing design wise, is to make a beginner plate that was kind of spaced out, like you knew exactly what the disparate things were. This one is a little bit more of a mishmash. It's like giving you more freedom of what to eat with which thing.
Mhm.
So it's got like 4 different meats here. It's got pates. It's got balsamic vinegar dripped all over it
Mhm.
also. But it's very red.
Yeah, yeah. This one is making a statement about being red.
Yes.
Which, like, again, that's sort of a thing that, like, sometimes you do if you're like this is only almost all warm colors. It's got that little like sprig of hang on, I know what that is, the green stuff. Sage.
Sage. Yes,
Is it okay?
it is
Cool.
sage.
Awesome. I know about things.
Yeah, you got it.
That's
But
uh,
this is fun to put together.
yeah, it's cool because, like, kind of what you've got, like, you've got the real, again, like a real organic texture of like all this meat, like the, again, sort of placed really close together, piled up, and then like this narrow border, and then like almost the same identical color but a totally different texture. So you're doing like where you're making the color palette like the same and not have contrast, but you are using contrast with like the textures in those things, and
Yeah.
then like a delineated border between them too, which, like, I don't know, it's the thing to do. You've got to put the meat in something.
Yeah, yeah.
But
This is
like
fun.
that is a thing of like, if you have two things that are like really similar in a lot of ways, you usually do want to give them like some sort of like space or buffer between. Like
Yes.
if you have two really intense colors, you don't want them necessarily touching each other. You probably want like a little bit of some sort of separation. Um, if you know your color wheel stuff, like complementary colors and of the same level of intensity tend to like look really, really harsh against each other. Like you almost
Mm,
your eye can't draw as a distinction between them, sort of. So
yeah.
so yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was not watching the time. I know we started a little late. But maybe we'll do two more or something like that, and then we'll move on to the last thing. I don't want to keep you, Chris. This is from my cookbook.
Ooh,
This is the chocolate bark. We're just looking at it because it's pretty.
yeah.
This was watermelon sprayed with honey tequila, and
Thanks.
so that's why the photo is so wet, because we wanted to. That's the key step in the recipe, which is
Cool.
spritzing it.
Nice.
But now I'm looking, everything I do is on a freaking diagonal now.
It's
Like
dynamic.
you've like pointed it out to me, and I'm like, oh my God,
There's an odd number of things there too.
odd number of things. Yeah. Oh my God. That's so crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Chris. Well, other Chris is in the chat now. Welcome. Yes, it's honey tequila sprayed on watermelon. Please try it. It's really fun. Also, you can spray tequila into your mouth. Uh, now, these last few photos are not for food styling. These were art pieces that I did. which is a very different approach, because the food styling stuff, yes, it's supposed to look appetizing, but this is actually meant to be interactive, or people are eventually going to touch it, you know? So this was at I had an edible thing at MoMA PS1
Ooh.
a couple years ago. They grew a rooftop garden and invited chefs to pick things and plate them. And then they had a big dinner party. And so this is my merguez sausage, panzanella, which is a bread salad. So I have like rye bread croutons, lamb sausage, tons of fresh greens from the garden, and then edible marigolds also.
Wow.
Yeah. But you can see my influence of the height is still here.
Yeah.
And the challenge with this stuff is that most of the food I brought was brown.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, everything is too brown here.
Yeah. Well, that's
so,
like, again, it lets the little like yellow flowers and orange flowers like really, really pop against that too.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, all warm colors too. Like, okay, brown is just dark yellow, pretty much. Dark yellow, dark orange.
I've never heard that
Pretty
before.
much what brown is. Yeah.
Really?
It's a little more complicated than that, but like
Sure.
different colors have different ranges that you can darken them down. Like
Got it.
purple and red, you can go really, really dark and still look at it and say, that's purple, that's red.
Okay.
You go really light with red and it's pink, or like lavender with purple. Sky blues or dark navy. Yellow is one of those where like, okay, you can go like a real pale pastel yellow, but yellow kind of starts out really light in our sort of light dark scale of colors. And when you go dark with yellow, you start to go through some like not great territory unless you start shifting it towards like your oranges and reds. And like, that's kind of the area that you'd think of as brown. Like,
got it.
Although it's also like colors are more complicated than just the 8 that come in a box of markers. So like, you know, brown can be like, again, it's one of those contextual things where it's like, you know, of the things that are brown in there, like the bread and the wood and the meats are all like brown, but like the meat's got a lot more purple in it. It's like
There's
the marigold,
dimensions of it. Yeah.
the marigold could arguably be like like I said, in that sort of like, that orange color could read as brown in another context. Very
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, blown my mind.
yeah, in a way, you've got like an almost like analogous color palette going on there.
This was a piece at Flux Factory. It's really weird to call a sandwich a piece, but it was. We had this series called Leftovers Special, where after Thanksgiving, you could come to the gallery and bring your leftovers, and then we would make sandwiches and then shoot these really nice photos of them. So this one is called Charcuterie, instead of charcuterie, because it's a leftover charcuterie board.
Yeah.
With a walnut dill pesto. And then you can see I still love having my like motion of it just got dropped on the plate or something, or you really just want to like gather it up with both hands.
This has got such a like hip cool immediacy to it, because like
it does.
I was gonna say the flash photography kind of thing too, right? Like this is the sort of opposite of what we were talking about lighting before. Like this looks like this is a flash. You get like those real distinct shadows and everything on it. Which is kind of a thing that like American Apparel back in the day was
pioneering. You're right.
Like real like anti-fashion photography look. This is kind of what that has. And when it's almost like, oh, I'm too cool to care, snap. And then it's like made out of leftovers. It's dropped, this is dropped on the plate. It's a handwritten sign. Everything about this is just sort of like on the fly immediately.
Yes.
Is kind of like what it is.
That is kind of the ethos of Put an Egg on It, which is the magazine I help edit. This was our event, and that is exactly nail on the head. Exactly.
You are visually succeeding in your communication.
And then finally, I was talking about backlight earlier, that we try to avoid it, but for an interesting experimental situation like light painting, which is not typically used in food styling, backlighting was kind of perfect for what we wanted to achieve here. We wanted to do kind of a salad from space, if you can see that. And I just love So for those of you who are not familiar with long form light painting photography, we're in a dark room. And there is this long exposure photo that is taken. And we use finger lights or smaller lights to draw around the photo or the image. And so I went running behind the dish with white finger lights, and then the photographer did a square in front of it so you could see like the motion blur of it. So that squiggly line is my hand up there. And so yeah, space salad. I love doing stuff like this.
That's
And what
super cool.
my favorite part of it is that it lit up the veins on the lettuce. And so it looks very like otherworldly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
it helps. Yeah, we had silver and then like a really crunched up black background there, so you can kind of see it a little bit. But
yeah. I almost thought this was some sort of like seafood kind of thing, because like the
cool.
sort of scallopy edges and the veins and everything on it, like because I think there's also like this kind of like real bloomy diffused lighting is something you usually see like underwater, I think. Plus, you know, the dark blues and all that.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool effect.
Yeah, I loved it. We shot like maybe 5 good dishes that day. I can share that later on the Twitter. But yeah, we got a Still Fleet special here. This was 5 years ago, so I had no idea what Still Fleet was yet. But yeah, absolutely could be Still Fleet dish. Space and deep sea are close cousins. It's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Why do you think both of my tabletop characters are in space and under the water elemental? But that's my last photo. I know we went over time. Sorry,
Yeah.
Chris. I'm gonna
No,
stop
no
sharing my
worries. I was gonna
screen.
say that last one is like, so like you're talking about like the difference between art and design earlier also.
Yes,
Like
yes.
there's like a cool ambiguity to that one where like the lettuce doesn't really look like lettuce. Like you can't really like necessarily tell what everything is because it's like recontextualized, and like design is usually where you're like trying to communicate something specific. Like a lot of the claim jobs is like, we want this to look like this specific mood or this specific thing. And like in that one, you get to kind of cut loose and be like, it's cool if you're not entirely sure what you're looking at, because it's like, that's the point. Ambiguity is where you get to play when you're doing like a more fine art kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that last one was like really, I've never seen anything like that. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's like one of my self portfolio pieces, like one of my own organized like shoot, just because I wanted to play. It wasn't for anything, but
Cool.
yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff because it's fun. I get to exercise, stretch my brain in different ways. But let's close up the show by pretending we're on Chopped, friends. Chris, can you spare a couple more minutes? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
It's all right.
But friends, let's pretend we're on Chopped. If you don't know this TV show, there's a basket with 4 mystery ingredients in it, and chefs have to use them to make a dish. In our case, you, the chat, will tell us what's in the basket. So please, fast fingers, shout out an ingredient for us to put in the basket. And the first 4 will be the ones that we use. As a reminder, there are no wrong answers. The purpose of this exercise is to think about how far the ingredients can go and maybe inspire your next meal. So I'll go through each of the ingredients individually, but feel free to just start shouting out your ideas, how you combine 2, 3, or all 4 of the ingredients. Imagine that you have a basic pantry and all the tools and time you need. Just remember, feature things in the basket, and let's go. Friends, smoked garlic from Guam, habanero from Finland, octopus, and honeysuckle. Oh my gosh. How about we do all of those? This sounds really fun. Let's do all 5 of these. So smoked garlic, habanero, octopus, honeysuckle, and thyme. Thyme the herb. So smoked garlic is garlic that is smoked. Actually not something that I've seen in the store. Guam, is that something you've seen in the store where you are? But essentially, I believe that the garlic becomes a little bit sweeter and softer when you smoke it. And what's great is that you can use the garlic paper to smoke other things, like smoke a beef or smoke a chicken, you know. Habanero is a hot pepper. So be careful with that. Make sure you're diluting it if you need to. A contrast to it will be dairy. Honeysuckle is edible flower. It has a very unique Bath and Body Works smell. It's very floral and smells sweet. I've seen people make simple syrups with it or garnish with it. It's a very beautiful, delicate thing. It's not something that you're supposed to cook down, but it can be steeped like a tea if you do dry it. Thyme is an herb. It's green. It's very Thanksgiving-y. You'll see it pairs a lot with poultry. It's very, I don't know, it's very French. You'll find it in a lot of Provençal spice mixes or herb mixes, usually tied in a bundle. What else about thyme? There's a lot of possibility there. And then octopus is an octopus. It's a seafood. It it can be really tough if you don't cook it right. So octopus is very temperamental because it's very muscular. And so when you cook it for too long or not enough, it can be too tough and rubbery. So a way to get around that I've seen is some chefs sous vide it, like so they pressure cook it, or they put it in a pressure cooker, like an Instant Pot, so that you get it to that very tender situation, and then sear it to get a crispy outside. And then I've also had octopus as a sashimi or a sushi. So there are various ways to prepare it. It can be in soups, it can be grilled, it can be braised, lots of things. Just get that cook time right, that's all. But this is virtual and over the internet, so your ideas are just as valid. So all we need to do is brainstorm, how would you mash up smoked garlic, habanero, octopus, honeysuckle, and thyme? Chris, do you have any initial ideas?
My initial idea, going back to my Japan travels,
Yes.
the takoyaki, like little octopus balls fried in dough batter. And I think that like some smoked garlic and habanero in there would make it like a really like surprise, spicy, super fragrant takoyaki kind of thing.
That's fun. Oh, I like that. And I think the thyme could also just go in there. It would just take a different flavor direction. Wow, yeah, takoyaki is a great avenue. So there is also a European pancake called an Ebbelskiver. Have you heard of this? Ebbelskiver is a pancake ball. So it's the same thing, but it doesn't have the octopus. So we could go in a dessert route by doing a honeysuckle thyme sweet pancake Ebbelskiver, which is so cute. Okay, Scott says, octopus is so good. Takoyaki, yes. Philin says, ooh, I can taste this. Yes. Shma says, I feel all this would go perfect in a really fresh and tangy ceviche. Octopus ceviche, or was it agua dulce, or kinilaw, or any kind of poke. So any of the raw preparation of octopus would work here, I think. And finish it with some cute honeysuckle flowers. Okay. Adorable. I love that. Trying to think here, how do we showcase that honeysuckle? Because it's such a delicate thing. You don't want it to get lost. I wonder if we can pickle it with like a rice vinegar.
Ooh.
Because the rice vinegar is the lightest out of all of them, or like a tarragon vinegar. And do a vinaigrette for, what if we did some really scary habanero poppers? It had like a garlic cream cheese on the inside, deep fry those, and then have a finish it with some thyme. Oh my God, really scary habanero popper. Like, really, really hot. I mean, you could diffuse that heat either by soaking the habaneros in cream or pickling them themselves. There's a lot you can do to combat that. Scott's into it. Give me the heat. Okay, Philin says there's a spirits brand that has a honeysuckle flavor, so pickled would definitely work. Oh, hell yeah. Ooh, okay, let's think about cocktails. How would you do a cocktail with this? I'm thinking Bloody Mary with that smoked garlic and the habanero and thyme. Oh, yeah. Yummy. My mouth is watering. Okay, friends, do you have any more ideas? How would you mash up smoked garlic, habanero, peppers, octopus, honeysuckle, and thyme. Yeah, Bloody Mary would be awesome, right? I want one now. I've done a seared octopus very simply with balsamic vinegar. So what if we made a smoked garlic vinegar with, or maybe what if we just made a hot sauce? Habanero and thyme are in a lot of Jamaican combinations that I've seen before. So we could just do a hot sauce for the octopus that we pressure cook and then sear so they get crispy edges. Mmm. Mmm. Oh my God, Schmas. You could painstakingly stuff the honeysuckle flowers like ricotta, habanero, smoked garlic, and fry it like a squash blossom. They're so tiny. They're so tiny, but not impossible. That'd be so funny. That's chef's table level of like preciousness. That's great. Oh, that's so funny. So if y'all have any more ideas, please shout them out in the chat. It's tweezer food. Yeah. Soigné for sure. If you have any more ideas, or if you're stumped, it's okay. You can always tweet your ideas to me or talk to me next week during the next stream, because we love talking about this stuff. I'm going to pull up the last call for ideas, friends, and I'm going to pull up next week's lineup. This is really exciting. So when I'm close to finishing a month lineup, I announce the next month, which is very exciting. I've already booked the entire month of May every Wednesday. Oh, I got one more idea here from Gwem. It's simple, but octopus and smoked garlic would be nice as fried as tapas. Yes, love tapas. That's like my love language is tapas. So thank you, Chris, for being here. How can people find you online?
Oh God, Scary83 on Twitter is probably the most direct. But also, if you want to track me down, Wonderville.nyc is the bar where we hang out at. And
yes, we hang out there. Yeah.
So yeah, like Death by Audio Arcade.com, and our Twitter handle I think is Jenn at DBA
Arcade. Yeah. Yeah.
DBA Arcade.
Yes, DBA Arcade.
Yeah.
That's us. If you have any more ideas, please do tweet them to me. But I'm going to tell you the lineup for the rest of the month and the month of May. So, Chris, thanks for being here. Next week, I'm joined by Joe Lepore from Rude Tales of Magic. He plays the character Bello. We will be talking about food. And then shortly after that, on May 5th, we've got a twofer. We've got both Carly Monardo and Christopher Hastings doing a couples stream with me. I'm going to be the awkward third wheel, which is going to be very fun because I love them very much. The week of May 12th, I'm hosting Ananda Gabo, who is a food biology researcher and artist based in Toronto. We will be talking about a lot of stuff that I don't know about, which I'm very excited about. We rescheduled our chat with Sean Ludwig of New York City Barbecue for May 19th. And then you know who this is, Chris. We got Mark Klevak on May 26th talking about all the food that he's been making lately during the pandemic. So thanks everybody for joining me this week. We hope to see you next week at 5 p.m. Eastern here on Attack the Pantry. And please don't forget to send me your cooking photos. But thanks for hanging out, everybody. And we'll see you next week. Bye.